Carries so much shame, silence, and secrecy. Have you ever heard that saying, what goes on in this house stays in this house? Well, we're not going to let that happen. What we say is hold your head up high. You have nothing to be ashamed of. So come on and join in the conversation with us right here on Worship Radio Detroit. Welcome to They Don't Tell once again. I'm so glad you're back with us today. My name is Lisa R. Gray. And we're here today with our guest. And our guest today is Kimberly Brown. How are you doing today, Kimberly?
Oh, I am doing fantastic, Lisa. Thank God that we are here with you on today to talk about this really powerful topic, They Don't Tell.
It is so nice to have you here with us today. I am looking so forward to what we'll be doing. Give me 1 second. One of the things that we talk about at They Don't Tell is no more shame, no more secrecy, and no more silence. We talk about topics that a lot of people you will not find talking about, and that's just child sexual abuse. We talk about that. We also talk about sex trafficking. And we want to talk about it. We want to bring it into the public purview because until we start discussing the hard topics, we will forever be caught into a cycle of it. And what happens so often, people walk around as if it's not happening, or they walk around with the shame of it. They walk around in silence, and that silence perpetuates the issue. Too oftentimes, that silence perpetuates the problem. Too often, the silence, and people are walking around in silence and they're hurting. People are walking around in silence and they're just they feel like they're the only ones. People walk around as if they're in their own silos. They're isolated, thinking that no one knows what's going on with them. No one cares what's happening to them, and that's just not the case. Let me tell you, I am an author. I did write a book. I want to tell you my book is called They Don't Tell, Child Abuse from a Mother's Perspective. And with that being a mother's perspective, I know to find out that your child has been sexually abused is a horrific It's a horrific thing. It's horrible. And so many of the mothers that I've talked to as I've gone around the country, they found, just like I did, that it was just mind-boggling. The guilt, the shame that was going on, especially in my house, because it was my ex-husband that was abusing my daughter. It started when she was in the 3rd grade. And I divorced him when she was in the 10th grade, and that was the first time that she finally told anyone what was going on. My daughter, Nikki, had been holding that on her own. She had been walking around with that pain, with that isolation all herself. She was walking around with the shame. She was walking around with that secrecy, and she herself was walking around in silence. She did not want anyone to know what was going on. She did not want me to know what was going on. Once she was old enough, because initially when it started happening, she didn't even know what was wrong. So she was walking around, did not want anyone to know what was going on, so she held it to herself. And over again, we find that that's happening. And I'm here to tell you that we cannot allow that to happen any longer.
Yes.
We have to talk about this issue. And when I say we, I'm saying we as the church, we as the community, we as the people of God, we as human beings, we have to discuss it. We have to stop pretending that it's not happening. We're going to have to make some choices. We're going to have to make some hard choices. We're going to have to say, this is going on in the community, and we're not going to allow it to happen. And that's why I'm so glad to have our guest today on. Kimberly, why don't you tell the people a little bit about yourself?
Well, as you noted, my name is Kimberly Brown, and I am the mother of 6 adult children and the grandmother of 11 grandchildren.
Wow,
yes. And we are just so grateful to God for all the experiences that He has given us. I serve as the senior assistant pastor of Zion Cathedral of Praise in Port Huron, Michigan. And I also, by profession, am a clinical therapist. And I have been in counseling for well over 20 years, have had an opportunity to counsel and be a part of social work on a macro level, looking at systems and looking at all of the things that affect individuals on that level and organizationally. And also over the last, I would say maybe 20 years for sure, we have had an opportunity to work in the clinic setting, being there as I said, as a clinical therapist. Okay. I've worked in the hospital as a psychiatric social worker for 7 years on all three of the levels, inpatient, outpatient, and also having opportunity to work in the day programs there. And then most recently, I'm grateful to God that I have established a partnership, Zoe Counseling and Consulting.
Oh, wonderful.
So that is something that is being birthed out.
You've had a lot of experience. You've been doing this for quite a while.
Yes. Okay. And of course, as a counselor, as a pastor, as a person who is engaged in the life of working with individuals, we have talked, we have seen, we have shared also in our own ministry of working inner healing and deliverance over the years. Okay. Traveling in and out of the country, we have had an opportunity to see this issue and the impact of this issue of child abuse, sexual abuse of adults, both men and women.
Men and women, absolutely.
Over the years, and its impact and the long-term impact. Yes.
That is just, well, you've been doing this longer than I have. You've been involved in it longer than I have. So when you say long-term impact, you've seen some things.
Yes.
You've experienced some things. You've walked this path with some people. You've done it clinically and you've done it spiritually as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So tell me, what have you noticed in this area? What would you like to share with the people?
Well, today, because as you begin to focus on this issue, yes, you can talk about the victim. Okay. You can talk about the perpetrator themselves. I've had an opportunity to counsel on both of those levels and deal with individuals spiritually who have been on both sides. But today, we want to focus on this thing of enablers.
Enablers. What exactly, when we're talking about child sexual abuse.
Yes.
So when we say enablers, what are we talking about there?
Well, we're talking about those individuals who knowingly or unknowingly, but mostly knowingly, the enabler that makes it possible. I want to deal with this word from a definition standpoint. Okay? Enable. Enable, it is to give someone or something the authority or means to do something. The evidence would enable us to arrive at a firm conclusion, or it's to allow, to permit, to let happen, to equip, and empower. To empower.
Wow.
To give the ability to someone or something to actually, can you believe it or not, harm another human being. And so this
wait a minute. You said to allow, to empower.
Yes.
And to permit. So it's one or something.
Right.
So when we say someone has enabled someone to hurt someone else, and in this case we're talking about on a sexual basis.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
And so when you look at this whole area of enabling, that right there all by itself,
that's huge.
Is very big.
That's crazy.
Because you would think, who would it be in their conscious mind or in their right mind that would allow another human being to hurt another human being? What does that look like?
Please tell us.
What is the face? And as I begin to really just look into this and think about the experiences that I have had, I thought about this, and this question came up.
Okay.
Enablers may have many faces. And guess what? The face may look like yours.
Say that one more time.
Enablers may have many faces.
Many faces.
And the faces may look like yours.
May look like yours and may look
like mine. May look like mine.
So enablers are all around us.
Enablers are all around, Lisa.
Wow.
And that's the thing. I was doing some research and looked at one thing in specifically, and I want to talk about this because when we think about enabling, many times people can think about the woman that is there that maybe is in this oppressive relationship, in an abusive relationship with an individual. And we'll talk about that one a lot.
We hear about that.
You hear about that a lot
over again.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, there was a lot of scuttlebutt, a lot of gossip, but you hear over and over again, oh, she knew what was going on. She allowed that to happen. So the majority of the time you'll hear that the mother was the enabler, or that the mother allowed it to take place.
Right,
so
right.
I'm going to be interested to see what you find.
Okay. But also, we have to understand that it could be the teacher.
Wow.
That it can be that individual who is the preacher. It could be the neighbor. It could be anybody who has a thought or an ideal, who has been given information that child and or the other person is affected in some kind of way. I was looking at one of the psychologists, I think Mindy Minix is her name, who was doing interviews specifically about this area. And she was talking about the whole issue that happened with Sandusky. And
Jerry Sandusky in Pennsylvania.
Absolutely. The coach.
That everybody loved.
That everybody loved. He helped everyone. He was there. And because of this reputation that he had, there were many that were willing to cover what it was that they saw. So even when individuals may have came and presented some of this information, it was still pushed up under the rug.
Yes.
Or what about in the church? What about the whole segment? We don't want to focus on any one particular religious group because we'll find that, unfortunately, children are being abused, adults are being abused sexually in the name of the church. In the church,
we have to talk
sometime.
About that.
We have to talk about it,
and we
because there's a lot of
Radio
pain.
Detroit have made the decision that we're going to discuss
Absolutely.
that. We don't mind discussing it. We don't mind saying that this is something that's going on inside the church. A lot of times, especially Protestants, we want to say, "Oh, it's the Catholic Church. It's the No, no.
Yes.
It's so easy to put off. It's that other group.
Yes.
It's them over there. No.
Yes.
Until we start looking inside ourselves.
Right.
Until we start taking the magnifying glass and saying, it's me standing in the need. It's me.
Yes.
That enabler may be me. It may be me that's turning away and turning the blind eye.
Right.
And wanting to push it under the rug and not wanting to. Well, I might have thought this, but I don't want to get involved in that.
Absolutely.
I don't want to be the one.
I don't want to get involved.
I don't want to get involved. I don't want to pick up the phone. What if I'm wrong? Well, I don't know. I really don't know it.
Right, right.
So I don't want to get involved. I don't want to get involved.
That's it.
The number of people that came to me after we went to court and said, I knew he was doing that.
My goodness. Right. You know it but wouldn't tell. Knew it but held in a secret. Absolutely.
Oh, I knew he was this and I knew he was that. Really?
Yes.
Did you now?
Right. And many times when these kinds of issues come up and when they are told, even when they are disclosed to individuals within the helping profession, maybe the Child Protective Service Department.
Okay.
And then that gets involved. Thank God for them. Thank God for the work that is done in that, because those who report and they give the information, but many times it's very difficult to detect. Even when they go out and do investigation, it's not always obvious to see because people do very well in covering things.
Not only that, but
and
the children
they
don't
intimidate.
always tell.
There you go. They intimidate
the
children. They,
Absolutely.
They tell them, that we're going to kill somebody, we're going to harm somebody.
They're threatened.
If so they're threatened by this, and or the individuals who are in their care, they are afraid to tell really what's going on because they're afraid of their well-being. Some of the other things that we were talking about with that, and then I was looking this up about, why people do not, why they enable. Okay. And one of them, conflicting emotions, okay?
That's a huge one.
Conflicting emotions, such as fears.
Yeah, go ahead.
They have fears. Belief, can you imagine this? Believing that abuse is normal. But depending on where it is that you were raised, the circumstances that you were raised in, if abuse or incest has been a part of that generational pattern, If it has been a part of the care pattern,
That's the way it's
within the
always is.
homes, they look at it, and basically, if that's what you're exposed to, and a lot of times, families of sexual abuse and or incest are private. And they're not allowing them to have a lot of outside exposure. And so what they're seeing is what's going on here. And after all, somebody is telling you that that's okay. That is supposed to be that caring person for you. And so a lot of time it is the belief that this is normal until they come outside of that system and begin to talk with other
family
individuals.
systems last week. That is so key, because when you come outside of the family system, you start to see, well, maybe the way my family system is operating is not.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's not the perfect way.
Absolutely.
Maybe there's some things that you start to see. But once it's what's that old saying? You can't see the forest for the trees.
Yes.
When you're a part of the system, you don't necessarily recognize the system.
That's right. That is right. And we look at other things. The fear of being ostracized.
Oh, that's huge.
Put out. There are a lot of people who have that one family member becomes isolated within that family system or within that particular social group or society, and looked at as the one who has gone outside, who is bringing trouble to, who's bringing conflict to the family, who's making the family look bad, or whatever the situation may be, or making the neighborhood, or making that particular group, that particular organization not be viewed upon very well.
You're putting shame on the family name, or you're putting shame on the church. How can you say that about our church? You're bringing reproach to the church by talking about an issue that is prevalent.
Yes.
How can that bring reproach upon the church to expose? Isn't that what Jesus did?
That's what he did.
He went into the church and exposed the money changers.
Yes.
He exposed that which should not be there.
Yes.
And until we start exposing it, until we have the guts to stand up and say, this is not right.
Yes, that's it. That's what I really love about Jesus. that Jesus just kept it real.
Yes, he did.
You see what I'm saying? And that's why he was not looked upon favorably. You think about it, the scribes and the Pharisees. You think about when he would heal people on what they would call on religious days and Sabbath days, and when he would free them, and when he would come and he would meet, women by the well who had issues. You understand what I'm saying? And how it was that he would go right to the core of the issue. And not be afraid to talk about it, not be afraid to touch them where they hurt. Woman, listen, you telling me all about this stuff going on in the mountains and those that worship, and Abraham went over there. But now I'm going to tell you, woman, listen, I'm looking at you. And he said, where are your husband? Where's your husband at?
Let's get to the core.
Let's get to the core of the issue. I love Jesus because he wants us to be healed from the core.
Yes.
And so we have to talk about it, because if we regard iniquity in our hearts, how can? He said, I can't hear you. But if you will confess your fault, according to the scriptures in John, if you will confess your fault, I will be faithful and just. Isn't that something? To forgive you of them. So we need
mercy.
So that people, that mercy
is needed. We're going to have mercy on our children, mercy on the situation. Say, you know what? And until we expose it, we even need to have mercy on the perpetrator, because until we expose that person, they will continue to do what they're doing.
That's it. That is it.
And they're caught in their own demonic cycle.
That's it. Somebody's
going to have some mercy on them and say,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing about it is that many times you see girls, and that when they begin to disclose, girls, women, they tell about it. So there's almost this thing now of, well, it's acceptable or it's okay. And I'm not saying it's acceptable for them to tell, but that when women say these things happen to them, but what about when men say?
That's a whole nother
issue. And who enabled them? And I was looking at a piece here with the Center of Sexual Offenders, and they begin to talk about these individuals, again, who enable, and the individuals who perpetrate. So let's go on to this list a little bit about, again, a little bit deeper about who they are. Sexual abuse children are those who sexually abuse children. Could be fathers, mothers, step-parents, grandparents,
a lot of grandparents,
cousins,
a lot,
neighbors, babysitters, religious leaders, as I said, teachers, coaches, All right. They come from all classes.
Let me add something to that.
Uh-huh.
Especially here in Michigan, doctors, Olympic
Yes.
doctors.
Oh,
We have the Olympic
absolutely.
doctor, Dr. Larry Nassar.
Absolutely.
He's been sexually abusing our Olympic gymnasts for decades.
Absolutely.
And even when they talk to, like the nurses,
Yes.
talking about enablers, oh, well, that you don't want. Do you know who that person is? Because of the status that the
Right.
perpetrator holds,
Right.
nobody believes them. Nobody will take it and do anything with it.
Yes.
And I have to tell you, I really wonder about our criminal justice system.
Yes.
I think they're a part of the enabler. I really do. I believe that the criminal justice system, and I know this is kind of veering off course right now, but the criminal justice system is a part of the problem, not a part of the solution.
All right.
One of the reasons is that many times they will take a perpetrator and they'll deal with them. They'll make a deal with them, and many times they'll come up with something. They'll have an assault charge, has nothing to do with it sexually,
Right.
and they've released the perpetrator to the public once again, and
Yes.
no one knows that they sexually abused the child.
Right. Right. And another thing that you will find is that once they even go into the investigative process, how long it takes
Oh, it's ridiculous.
to bring it to trial,
It's ridiculous.
how long it takes to bring it to justice.
Yes.
So the perpetrator is still free.
Not only is the perpetrator still free, but the perpetrator is still harassing the family.
Absolutely.
And I'm telling you from personal experience.
Okay. Okay. So you
The
understand
perpetrator
this.
and their gang.
Okay.
Okay.
So you understand this.
I do understand.
So the person is being re-victimized.
Over and over.
There you
and
go.
Over again.
There you go.
Absolutely. So the enablers. I'm glad we're hitting this. Topic.
Okay.
You don't hear
The list
anybody
can be
talking about
great.
enablers.
Right. That's
But
it.
there is enabling.
That's
I
it.
mean, sometimes you think about it as being just. Sometimes it's just. And I'm thinking about the sins of omission and commission.
Yes.
You know, sometimes it's just the fact that you turn the blind eye and you refuse to acknowledge what's happening, or you leave the child with somebody that you know.
Absolutely.
You already know that the person is
Yes.
a pervert, but you're leaving your child with the pervert.
Right. And it happens over and over again. You know,
There was a
again,
case
out of
where-
necessity,
I
out
think
of
we talked
whatever
about it
they
last week.
seem to feel.
There's a
It's
case
necessary.
happening in Tennessee right now where a child was impregnated at 11 years old.
Yes.
And guess what? The child was impregnated a year later by the same person. How does that happen?
Yes.
How does that happen?
Yes.
Somebody's enabling, somebody's derelict of their duties. There's negligence going on.
Yes.
Sins of omission and commission. We're not saying that you took the person and said, go molest them, but you allowed it to happen.
Absolutely.
You permitted it to happen. What did you say? Enablement was allowing and permission.
Permitting. Yes.
You permitted some things to take place.
That's it.
We're going to, and you know what? Whether we're talking about the church, whether we're talking about the schools, whether we're talking about the homes, it doesn't matter what venue we're talking about. There's enablement going on everywhere.
Yes.
And we're going to have to stop it.
Have to stop it. When I was looking at these, again, the statistics coming out of this study, it floored me. Every 10 seconds in America, 10 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's a report of child abuse. There's a report of human trafficking. There's a report of rape. There's a report. 1 out of 4. And we're talking about just things that are reported.
That's just reported. Now how many
Just
happened?
reported.
Just reported.
1 out of 4 women, 1 out of 6 men. Sexually abused. It is something. This whole area of enabling, we have to talk about it.
Yes.
We have to open it up. And I applaud you, Lisa.
Yes.
I applaud you for allowing God to use you.
Yes.
Because there is so much secrecy.
Oof.
Secrets.
We've got to expose it.
Secrets.
We've got to expose
And it's destroying the fabric of our society. It's destroying the fabric of the family.
Yes.
It is keeping people in captivity from the victim to the enabler to the perpetrator.
To the perpetrator.
Because the deal on it is that really, as you look at this whole thing, a percentage-wise, that many of these perpetrators were also victimized.
There's no question about it. There's no question about it, that the cycle is continuing. And
It
that's
is
why
continuing.
we're going to have to break the cycle. We're
Yes.
going to have to interject. We're going to have to do something different than what we're doing, because we know that what we're doing is not working. Actually, it's gotten worse.
Absolutely.
It's gotten worse.
Absolutely.
You know why? Because a perpetrator doesn't just doesn't sexually violate one child.
Yes.
They go to 2
Yes.
to 3 to 4.
Yes.
And there's some way we know they
Yes.
have done hundreds.
Yes.
And until somebody stops it, until it's
Yes.
interjected,
Yes.
it's going to continue.
That's it.
We
I-
have to stop this.
You know,
we don't have
again,
a choice.
just looking at this whole thing, the scope of the magnitude
Oh,
of this is
my
great.
Lord.
Because out of the reported ones, as you said, how many within that whole family system? I have known whole families
Yes.
of individuals that once somebody has the courage to tell,
Right.
then another sister or another cousin or another friend.
They start
See,
coming out
because
the woodwork.
not only it may not be going on in your house, but it may be connected to somebody else's house that you have allowed unknowingly or knowingly your child to go into.
See, what happens a lot of times, and tell me if you find this to be the case. Once someone is no longer in that house and they're away from the perpetrator, they're
Yes.
like, I'm free. I've got away. But they never report it.
Right.
So the perpetrator goes to the next person, whether it becomes a cousin or it becomes a grandchild or it becomes a neighborhood kid.
Right. Right.
It doesn't matter. They don't just stop.
That's right.
They
And you
continue.
know, I was thinking about the thing of, tell the whole area of that and protection within our communities.
Okay.
I'm born and raised in Detroit. Thank God for Detroit. And I can remember the neighborhood in Detroit and what that neighborhood looked like.
Okay.
It looked safer than it does now because you had individuals looking out for each other. And you have so much of this, latchkey children that have to take themselves, that have to be by themselves,
That's a lot.
or that they're left in the hands or in the care of someone else who is dealing with this area of being a sexual predator.
Predator.
And you don't have the neighborhoods, you see what I'm saying, that we had in the days that
I
I
believe
grew
that.
up at least,
I really believe that.
where the neighbors
Looked out
for one another.
I believe that.
You see, and so therefore, even as you were talking about the growing rates of incident,
It's growing. There's no question.
and
about
it's
it.
not that it wasn't always there.
Not saying
Definitely, we are grateful for talk programs like yourself.
Mm-hmm.
We're grateful for information that is getting out. We're grateful for all of these things that are there that are allowing people to open up and finally share that people are getting exposed to help. However, when you think about that, your immediate surroundings, who is there helping to keep things safe for
That's
our
a good
children?
question. Who's in your neighborhood? Who's watching out for your children? Who's watching out for your grandchildren?
Right.
Who's there for them?
Right. And even though, yes, I did say that here it is that these same individuals, because the face of the perpetrator can't be yours or mine.
Right.
You see?
Right.
But at the same time, it's good to know that you had
A
safe
community.
places, a community.
Yeah, a community makes
The
a difference.
community makes a
There's no
difference.
question about it. A community does make a difference.
Yes.
But you know what? I was thinking about enablers in terms of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was just thinking about it, it took me back to Eli.
Wow. Come on.
And when I was looking at it, Eli, Lord, I think it was in 1 Samuel. I wrote it down, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see if I can find it. Eli was the high priest for Israel. And Eli knew about some things that his sons were doing, Hophni and Phinehas.
Mm-hmm.
And Eli was, in fact, an enabler.
Come on.
Eli knew about some things that they were doing that God was not pleased with.
And where were they doing it at?
In the house of the Lord. 1 Samuel 3:13, he said, for I've told him that I will judge him, talking about Eli.
Okay.
I will judge him.
Okay.
God said, I'm going to judge Eli and his house forever
Forever.
for the iniquity which he knew because his sons made themselves vile and he restrained them not. There's some things that were going on that were taking place in the house of the Lord.
In the house.
That the high priest who was in charge knew, and he didn't take care of
Yes,
business.
yes.
I'm saying to you, if there's some things going on in your house, in your community, in your church, in your schools, wherever, and you know about it, then it's time for you to speak up.
Yes.
It is time for you to have some mercy. It's time for you to speak up about that you know. And that you're not even sure of. See, one of the things about reporting child abuse, it's not your job to investigate. It's simply your job to pick up the phone and say, hey, something's not quite right. I don't know.
Absolutely.
I don't know for sure. But it's worth checking into because I'm concerned about the safety of a child. I'm concerned about the safety of a teenager.
Yes.
That's all that we're required to do.
Right.
But we are required to do it.
Right.
Because we are the body of Christ.
There you go.
And I'm saying to you,
There you go.
the number of people that came up to me and said, I knew he wasn't this. I knew
Yes. Yes.
I knew he was messing with, and I'm talking about, some people talked about my ex-husband molesting disabled people.
Yes. Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
As if it was common knowledge. But who's picking up the phone? Who's putting a stop to it? Well, I tell you what, the Lord is saying, cry loud and spare not.
Yes.
Somebody's going to have to look out on behalf of our children, for our children, the widow, the fatherless. Who's going to speak up on behalf of our babies?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to tell you who's going to speak up is you.
Absolutely.
Lord's waiting for you to speak up.
Yes.
He's waiting for me to speak up.
Yes.
We cannot rely on somebody else. Well, let somebody else do it because I don't want to get involved. Really? And you're a part of the body of Christ, and you don't want to get involved.
Yes.
In helping a child.
Right.
I don't know about what gospel you're serving.
Yes.
I don't know about what Jesus you're serving. Because that's one of the things we're called to do. To look out for one another. Yes, I am my brother's keeper.
That's it. That's it.
So we can no longer afford to enable.
Yes.
And that's why we're bringing this show to you today. We're going to ask you, if you're on Facebook, share. Twitter, share. Periscope, share this with somebody. Let them know that we're going to be here on Mondays, 3 o'clock. We're going to discuss some issues that you don't hear about very often. But it's time to expose it. It's time to talk about it. It's time to let people know that you are not the only one. There was just a alternative rock singer that was just committed suicide.
Yes.
On Thursday.
I
can't think of the name of the band. I think it's LinkedIn. He just committed suicide, and I'm telling you, he talked about his molestation and how it took him into a life of drugs and alcohol.
Yes.
And now at 41, he's committed suicide. This is happening with our young men. It's happening with our young... And you know, he said he was all alone and he hated his family.
Yes.
Now, he never told anybody, but he hated his family for not even seeing. Maybe somebody noticed something. I have no idea. But if you're noticing something with a child, are you noticing something, especially with our young men, because they get very angry. They get very angry.
Yes, yes.
And
Absolutely.
and we don't know what's going on. But you know what? Pick up the phone. If you see something, pick up the phone.
Yes.
It's our responsibility.
It is our responsibility. And when you were talking about this, looking at what happens or signs and symbols of what is going on, when you are a prevalence, a very strong prevalence, and of individuals who have been sexually abused, the whole issue of cutting.
Oh, yes.
Cutting
absolutely.
to address pain.
The pain, right.
And you will find that statistically, 60%, most of the time, you can trace it back.
You can see molestation.
That there is some type of, and mostly sexual abuse. For abuse comes in different forms, but the sexual abuse and the prevalence that is there in those populations who cut and seek to, accomplish suicide is very, very, I'm not saying that's the only one, but I'm saying this whole area. And then the long-term effects, because this sexual abuse, it may happen in the childhood, but there are sometimes people carry these secrets, Lisa, for a lifetime.
They do.
and it affects them. Let me share something with you. I was looking at Dr. Laura Burnham, I think that's her, Berman, who wrote the book of Love. What's about the name of the book of Love.
Of Love, okay.
And you can look more into this on Oprah.com. But it is a power of, their body image. How people's will become distorted because the body was the instrument that was used during the sexual abuse. So you'll see them. You'll see teenagers, beautiful girls, shapely, and they'll wear oversized clothes to try to hide the body image. Yes. All of these things, because after all, that if you can't see my body, you see what I'm saying, then maybe you won't want to touch my body.
Right.
And so feelings of shame, guilt, isolation, when it leads to issues, even clinical depression, all of these things that it leads to. Low self-esteem, Lisa.
Self-esteem is huge.
How individuals see and view themselves.
Right.
And many times they get caught up in it themselves. Well, this is all that I am.
Right. They decide
and this is all that they can be.
That's my whole value.
That's it.
And they go, oftentimes, they get involved in
prostitution.
They become very promiscuous.
Absolutely.
And they say, well, if that's going to happen to me, I'm going to get something out of it.
I've
heard that over and over again.
Absolutely. They'll become, a sexual confusion, sexual identity, because of different things, eating disorders, obesity, anorexia, drug abuse, all of these symptoms that are coming out of the long-term effects, okay? Poor decision-making in relationships. Then getting again into relationships with abusers, whether it be physical abuse or whether it be sexual abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, wherever it is.
But it becomes a way of life.
It becomes a way of life. That is it. Absolutely. Self-destructive. We already talked about that. Suicidal gestures. Even if it is not that I want to harm myself, bringing attention to the situation, the problem is that people die and that people are harmed and that they internalize this pain because somebody won't tell. Because they don't feel safe to go to others and tell. And so they carry this years after years, sometime into marriages.
Oh, absolutely.
And are
absolutely.
So there's
I've had
so
some
much.
men contact me about their wives that were sexually abused, and it's affecting their married life.
Absolutely. And so much that is there.
Yes.
That is, prevalent as a result of this whole issue of sexual abuse. And we're talking today more specifically about the enabler. And I want to say something about this enabler because what I find, having counseled people on all ends of this, and I will tell you in disclosure that it's not easy to deal with that perpetrator, but I'm so glad that through the power of the Holy Spirit that Jesus, he met people exactly where they were.
Okay.
And the thing is that people need to understand that God's power is able to set you free from everything.
Yes, he is.
But you got to get honest. You got to get honest and you got to get accountable. They've got to get accountable in these situations. You see the victim, once the victim has the courage, and they're able to open up and be able to tell. But not only that person, the perpetrator and the enabler, that yes, indeed, I sat and I watched, or I sat and I turned my head. I closed the door and I went to sleep while I knew that boyfriend or that husband, or literally that because of their own self-image or their protection. Now, I didn't get into that part of the enabler, the reliance on the abusive person.
Absolutely. That's huge.
People who have themselves stuck in situations because they're relying on them, because of lack of money, financially. How am I going to be able to make it?
I need a man.
I need him.
I'll take whatever I can get.
See, come on now.
I'll take it in any form I can get it.
There you go.
But I'd have to have a man around.
Or here's something else. I don't want my children not to have a father. I don't want them. So even if it means that I'm going to stay with this father, that is the abuser, so that I don't want this pattern of, fatherlessness to continue. I'll stay under this situation.
So they're trading one evil for another evil.
Absolutely.
And they've offered their child
and in
up
their
for the
mind, they
trade.
offer their child up for the sacrifice.
Would you say that again?
Offer the child up for the sacrifice.
I've had some clients say that.
Yes.
I was sacrificed. Those were their exact words. Yes. I was the sacrifice.
Absolutely. That's
wow.
That somebody would knowingly put their child for their own benefit. There are many with the whole issue of sex trafficking, with this whole issue of black market sales, all of these things.
Okay.
Somebody is standing there enabling,
knowingly.
Letting these things happen to children, letting these things happen to adults, letting these things happen. You talked about disabled. That's a whole other population, the vulnerable population, amen, that is being victimized by these perpetrators and other enablers, leaving them in the hands and in their care.
Where's your bowels of compassion, your bowels of mercy? Where the Lord speaks about?
There you go.
Where is it?
There you go.
That you allow this to take place.
James 1:27 says, religion and God, our Father, except, in his paraphrasing, as pure and faultless is this, to look after the orphans and the winners.
God. Say that again.
To look after them.
To look after them. And you know what it says in James 4:17? Anyone who knows to do good,
come on,
and doesn't
do it, what? Enables.
Those are their
enables.
That's exactly.
If we break it down in those words and put it there, you know to do good.
You know what to do,
absolutely,
but you choose not to do it.
Absolutely.
And we're doing that in the church.
That's it.
And we're doing that in the schools.
Yes.
And we're doing that in the homes. And we're doing that in the communities. And we're doing that in the grocery stores. And we keep doing it over and over again.
Right.
And then we look at the child and say, I wonder what's wrong with them.
Yes.
Really?
So we keep this cycle going. Because I said often those who they find are perpetrators are those who have been abused themselves.
I got to ask you something.
Okay.
I'm a counselor, right?
Yes.
I'm a licensed professional counselor. You're a licensed social worker.
Yes.
Have you ever seen anyone who was diagnosed with bipolar or with that wasn't sexually abused?
Not very often.
Okay.
Not very often.
Okay. I just
not very often in my years of practice.
So over and over again, we're talking about some things that are at the core issue.
Absolutely. See, because
that
trauma, what trauma that is, what trauma does on a life, and when somebody has been penetrated, when somebody has been traumatized physically, and it causes that individual almost to shut down, and they have it in the term, in some situations, dissociation. They just call about it multiple persons, all of these different things. Yes, to develop for survival. Many times they take it on for their own survival.
So that they could just deal with it.
That's it.
You know, I have to bring this back. I think I was reading in a book one time. I was reading someone talked about their sexual abuse. And finally, they were saying, this is what they were saying in their mind. Because their father, I know who it was. It was Miss America. What year? I don't remember. She's an elderly lady now, but she was a Miss America.
Yes.
Finally, her father was very wealthy, was abusing her. But she said finally one night she heard her mother coming down the hallway when her father was in her bedroom molesting her. And she kept thinking to herself, it's finally going to end. It's finally going to end. It's finally going to end. And she heard her mother's steps coming toward her bedroom. Little by little, she could hear her mother coming. And her father froze. She froze because she knew finally it was about to end. And then she heard her mother's footsteps turn around and leave. That door never opened. Nothing was ever said.
Yes.
And nothing ever changed in her life.
And do you think that the mother didn't know?
Nothing ever changed in her life.
Nothing
Was
changed.
nothing. For some reason,
Mm-hmm.
that door was never open.
Yes, yes. And a lot of times that is what happens. Day after day after day, the doors never open. That might be a good book. The door is never open. And so people go from years. As a counselor, I've heard people talk about their experiences from the time that they were very young children into the time that they were adults. Even some who were exposed to the perpetrator after they became adults, and them still trying to make some suggestion toward them, and the immediately that sent them
right back to being a child.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, it'll take those triggers we're talking about now. How it'll take you right back to that time.
Yes.
To that moment.
Yes.
Being a child again and being frozen.
Right. Because that mother, in your situation that you were talking about, refused to hear, refused to address the situation, and so years and years of pain. Yes. And the beautiful thing about the victim, you see, is that victims, they become overcomers.
They do, absolutely.
That victims they can become. But sometimes the journey of getting there, and having people around them. Yes. You see what I'm safe people.
Oh, that's so important.
Caring people.
So important.
People who will have the courage to stand up and say, it wasn't your fault. That you are a good and a worthwhile person, and that you can hear what God says about you, that you were chosen in him before the foundation of the world, that you're not junk, that you're not abused, that you're not messed up, you see, as a result of that. And so that becomes the empowerment. But for so long, those who suppressed them, kept them down, would not share the stories because of this whole thing. Let me go back to this list of other areas to look at of why people enable.
Okay.
Why they look at this and the thing that blew my mind.
Let me interject for a second. If you're listening, and our radio listeners, if you're listening and you're going back to a time where perhaps you're thinking about something that happened to you or something that you didn't catch. We want you to go back to that time, and we want you to look at it and see what is it that we could have done differently. I'm going back to a time and seeing what is it that I could have caught, that I could have done differently. And we want us to think about it, and we want us to be more aware. We're not saying any of this to condemn you, because that's not the whole purpose. The purpose is to convict us, to encourage us to act on behalf of those that we can. We as a people, we as a human race are going to have to do something different. And we are encouraging you to talk about this in your families, to talk about it in your communities, to encourage those that have community groups. If you are a mentor with your teenagers, with the young people and your youth groups, we just want you to talk about this issue. And I tell you over and over again, when you have youth groups, if you ever have a youth group and you ask them, do you know anyone who's been molested? Invariably, 3/4 will be answering yes. So you're dealing with people who've been molested. They just don't talk about it.
Right.
And their concern is that nobody cares.
Right.
So you may be the one person that takes the time to let them know, I have some understanding, but anything that you need, I'm here for you.
Yes.
And what you said is so key, because they have to know that there's some safety.
Yes.
And that they can trust you.
Yes.
So make sure that you're being that person of safety, that you're being that place of that safe place that they can trust you, that they can talk about whatever's going on. We do not want to lose our children to cutting. Yes. We don't want to lose our children to the drugs. We don't lose our children to promiscuity. We don't want to lose our children to a pole on a gentleman's club.
Yes.
Okay, we don't want to lose our children to all these things, to this cutting. We see some people that have tattooed themselves from top to the bottom.
Yes.
Because they're hurting.
Yes.
We have some people that are hurting. And we want you to be aware, we want you to be cognizant, and we want to be on the lookout for our children.
Yes.
Okay.
This is that was strong, Lisa. That was strong. And that is really the thing that we must say, that we must get out. And as I was talking about this thing, enablement, social pressure, peer pressure, why people enable, as we talked about that in the beginning, culturally. Culturally, sometime in different cultures, I was looking at this, how discipline is taken care of and how individuals keep things close. So even getting to a person like a counselor, is like taboo. Okay. In some of the, some of the cultural environments. And so people, you keep it in the family. You don't tell anybody. You hush, you be secret. But no, we must open up our mouths.
And you must that's a lot in the African-American culture.
Oh, yes.
You don't go out and talk about this.
Yes.
Go to a counselor. Why would you want to do that?
Right.
And tell them all, why not?
That's it.
When you hold on to that stuff, you know what happens? Physical issues.
Yes.
You become physically sick. People walk around with ulcers.
Yes.
Because it's eating them up on the inside out.
Yes. And you were talking about trust. Sometimes people don't trust systems. They don't trust the police. They're taught not to trust.
Well, that's true.
You see what I'm saying? And there are some legitimacies in those things. But we go there and look at all of these things that are existing when you talk about trust. Who can you tell?
Who can you trust?
Who can you tell? Could you imagine coming... even in your situation, had your daughter actually coming to you and then, because I've had people share this, and then to be made the blame?
It happens all the time.
To be made the blame.
Finally tells and then they're not believed,
wow.
And then it becomes their fault. Well, what were you wearing? Well,
right.
What did you say? Well, what did you...
Yes.
How are we going to take and twist it and make it the victim's fault?
Absolutely.
I've heard that over and over again.
Absolutely.
Well, what were you wearing?
Yes.
Were you wearing skimpy clothes around them? Huh?
And it had to be something you did.
Yeah, what did you do?
It had to be something you did. How did you cause them to be attracted to you? Why was it that they came to you and nobody else? None of your other sisters, nobody else.
Yeah, what?
And brothers or anybody else is saying that happened to them.
I wish what we were saying wasn't true, but we know.
We know it's true.
And it may have happened to you, and I want to say to
yes.
you, I really feel the need to say this. If this was the case for you, if no one stopped to acknowledge your pain, let me be the first.
Yes.
To first of all acknowledge that it never should have happened. It was not your fault. Not only was it not your fault, but you weren't even loved, you weren't hugged, you weren't wasn't acknowledged, and I am so sorry. On behalf of a mother that didn't say the right things to you, on behalf of a father, on behalf of a teacher, on behalf of whoever was in your circle that didn't say it the right way, didn't give you what you needed, I want to stand on the gap and say on behalf of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, it never should have happened to you.
Yes.
It was never God's intent for you to be touched in that way. It was never His intent for you to be touched. But because it's happened, we want you to know that there is help for you. There's healing for you.
Yes.
There is hope.
Yes.
And you do not have to walk around carrying shame as if there's something that you did. You didn't do it. Yes. It was not your fault. It was not your fault. And there is nothing about you that caused anyone to want to hurt you. It's always something about that other person.
Yes.
Always something about that other person.
Whatever you do, do not hold it in another day. Know that God loves you. Know that God created you in His image and after His likeness. Know that it is the desire of the Father for you to be made whole.
Yes.
You can get up. There are those, if you just open up your mouth. See, God's getting ready to use you. Just as He's doing Miss Lisa, God's getting ready to use you because you're going to have the courage. He told y'all to be strong and be very courageous.
Very courageous.
Not another day do you have to sit in that pain. Not another day do you have to sit in that fear. Know that you can tell and that when you do, that there is help available to you. I was thinking about there's a couple of numbers that individuals
Please,
can
let's
call.
share.
This one, you can even go online. There's so many. You can Google it if you don't know, what to do. There's help. There's help.
There
There's
is help available.
800-989-8255. And this one is, there's also an email address for the npr.org. They can call there. Love is Respect. And I was talking about
like
that one.
that.
Loveisrespect.org. The number there, 866-331-9471. And you can call. There's so much. You can go and sometime with your local police officer, go talk with your pastors that you trust, or those within the church that are there that you can talk with.
Yes.
Do not be afraid to talk with somebody.
Don't hold that to
Don't
yourself.
hold it to
Don't be
yourself.
an island unto yourself.
Even if it is in the environment that you have had an enabler who's been close to you, I want you to understand again that there are those who will listen.
Absolutely.
There are those who will believe your story, and there are those who will act on your behalf.
Yes. Would you give that number again? I just looked at.
Yes. 800-989-8255.
800-982-8.
And 989-8255, and then loveisrespect.org. You can get online, and as I said, there's so much help available to us.
Absolutely. Oh, hey, first timer. I'm talking to some people on Periscope. I just put my glasses on, so I can't see without them, guys. So I have to apologize to you. God bless you, first timers. If you'd share with your followers on Periscope, let them know that we'll be here discussing the topics. We just really want to start talking about this so much more. Hi, at CT Shay. Good to have you on board.
Bless you.
We'll be back next week. Next week we're going to be having a guest on that we'll be discussing. I can't think of the name. The name of it is. Thank you. Blessings to you.
Bless you.
Oh, look at all the first timers we have.
Yes.
We got
awesome.
Lisa and Sobella and Katia and Worthy. Power of Love Minister. Hey, first timer from London. Blessings
Awesome.
to you.
Mm-hmm.
Blessings to you. Ramer, first timer. We got a lot of first timers today. Blessings to you. Oh, okay. Pastor Kim, they said we want to see you come back on again. We will definitely have you. Blessings to you both. Thank you.
God bless you.
I tell you, we just really, I so appreciate you coming on. This is really great. We're going to be back next week. Next week, we're going to be discussing, hi, Kenya, blessings to you. Blessings to you, Holy Bless. We're going to be discussing sex trafficking, but on the side of those young men, old men that are, I can't think of the word that I'm looking for, but in the demand. We're going to talk about ending the demand, because we know that it's all about
the profile.
supply and demand.
The profile of
Right.
those that are in demand.
Ending demand for those Johns that are out looking for prostitutes. So we're going to talk about that.
Wow.
Okay. We got Pastor Kim.
Amen. God bless you.
This has been a blessing. We
God
thank you
bless
so
you.
much for sharing with us today. You can get in contact with us again. The name of our book is They Don't Tell, Child Abuse from a Mother's Perspective. You can reach us at lisargray.com. So many blessings to you today. I thank you so much for sharing with us.
Yes.
Great show today. We really appreciate your being with us. Come back and join with us again next week. Follow us on Periscope. You can reach us at Facebook at They Don't Tell. Lisa Gray on just Facebook. You can reach out to us there. kidsdon'ttell@gmail.com. Many blessings to you. And until we see you again next week, God bless.
God bless you. And thank you, Lisa.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening. I hope the information that we shared today was helpful and informative. And if you'd like to know more information about the topic of child sexual abuse, please join us at our website, lisargray.com. And also, if you are interested in sowing into the ministry, you can do so at that same website. You can contact us on our Facebook page, They Don't Tell. Thank you.